The city rolled out an expansive new data portal on Tuesday in the hopes that certain unassailable facts can help drive community change. Here to tell us about it is the city's chief of analytics, Dr. Parvez Ahmed. Good morning, Dr. Ahmed.
Good morning, Ann.
Nice to see you. In the simplest sense, this is a data set that allows you to sort of slice and dice various metrics of civic health. Right now, the data it allows you to look by council district, by city council district. Soon, it will also allow you to shuffle by zip code and census tract. And so we'll get to the details of what it can do. But was there a particular incident or set of incidents that prompted the city to take this on in the first place?
So about a year and a half ago, we had a meeting at CSX that was attended by the mayor. City Council President Ron Salem was in attendance. Several CEOs were there, community leaders, academic leaders. And the conversation was around what can Jacksonville do to position itself to not only be a destination of choice for families and businesses, but also be a city that can provide opportunities for all its citizens to thrive. And in motivating that conversation, one of the things that I presented in that meeting very early on was data around life expectancy. At that time, I did not have a granular level data on available, so I was able to just pull it from a couple of public sources. And we saw there was a life expectancy difference between two zip codes in Jacksonville, about 10 years or 9 years. And when I presented the data, it brought like a little bit of an audible gasp in the room. People were surprised to see it was 9 years. So that prompted the question. And as the day kind of unfolded, a lot of spirited conversation, lots of opinions about where Jacksonville is and where it should go next. One of the questions that kept on coming up throughout the conversation is, what is the data about it? How do we know this is where Jacksonville is so we can position ourselves better to know where we should go next? So that led me to a conversation with UNF President Dr. Moaz Lemayem, who led an initiative similar to this when he was the dean of the business school at USF in Tampa. They started about 7 or 8 years ago. You can go and visit their website. It's called State of the Region. We kind of little bit borrowed the name from them with attribution, State of Jax. And what they do is very similar. They track Tampa against 19 other cities. They do not do what we are doing in tracking internal disparities within the city. So we have kind of built upon what they had laid as a foundation. So we are doing two things, comparing Jacksonville to about 13 other peer cities that we have very carefully selected. 3 of the peer cities that we have selected are in Florida. 7 of them have consolidated governments like we have. 8 or 9 of them have similar industries that we have. 9 of them are majority minority cities like we are. So we carefully curated a list that we can realistically compare ourselves to. But we are also looking at internal disparities across city council districts, across zip codes, and across even neighborhoods where data is available.
And so this conversation you talk about was kind of people demanding data. My colleague at Jacksonville Today, in covering this launch of this portal, described it as an effort to remove politics from policymaking. And it was something that the mayor herself spoke to after that event. She said, quote, "My dearest hope, I'm just going to say it, is this takes the politics out of arguments." And I know that's a pipe dream on a lot of levels, but what we are doing here is fact finding. And so it sounds like in addition to being inspired by kind of the questions that some in the community have, there's also an effort to try to establish a universal set of facts.
It is. I mean, I come from the world of business. Before I joined Mayor Deegan's administration, I was a business school professor at UNF. And in the school, in the world of business, we say something that does not get measured does not get managed. That's a quote from Peter Drucker, the famous management guru. It is true that if you do not know where you are, how would you chart a course where to go next? And in a hyper competitive world that we live in, as a city, we are not an isolated island. We are competing with other cities, not just nationally. In many instances, we are competing globally with other cities to attract businesses, to attract talent, to attract people. The good news about Jacksonville is that we are among the fastest growing cities in the country. We're the third fastest growing large city in the country. I shared this at the press conference that it took Jacksonville 55 years from 1970 to 2025 to add 500,000 people to our city. In the next 25 years, in half the time that we did previously, we will add another 500,000 people to our city. So that growth is impressive. People are choosing to live in Jacksonville. But that growth can be a blessing if we manage it properly. But if we fail to manage it properly, then it can become burdensome. So our goal through data is to position ourselves, to know where we are so that we can prepare and embrace the change that is coming.
And so in determining what metrics to measure, those were considerations that you conducted with a panel of very varied group of people that kind of served as an advisory body to this. Um, and so you're selecting things that are primarily focusing on things like health, housing affordability, life expectancy, kind of a variety of social indicators, education. How would you describe what the administration chose to prioritize in terms of things that matter when it comes to measurement?
So this is not just administration's priority because the advisory council that is advising this initiative is made up of members of Mayor Deegan's administration, member of a member of city council, as Councilman Lehnan is part of this advisory group. There are business leaders, civic groups, nonprofit leaders, academic leaders. So it's a representative body that reflects the diversity of Jacksonville. Um, the idea was what data positions us to propel ourselves to the next level. So when you look at any kind of list that ranks Jacksonville and other cities, we do very well with our business climate. We attract a lot of businesses. The small business climate in Jacksonville is generally good compared to relative to other cities. We are among the fastest growing job markets in the country, so we do well there. Where we are most challenged in Jacksonville is around quality of life indicators. Quality of life indicators meaning health, education, um, among other things. So what we did in our data segmentation, we said we will look at data two different ways we will segment the data so it becomes accessible and easily understandable for the people. One way we will look at is what we often describe as a cradle to grave journey. So we start with early childhood, school years, work years, higher education years, and then retirement years. Then, in addition, we segment the data by health, education, and social factors. So we segment the data different ways so we can get a fuller picture of what we are looking at. But right now, if you go to stateofjax.org, you can see what data is available. We have published about 30 data indicators, and this is just the beginning part of it. We will add more. So we will add more that reflects on our business climate. We will add more that reflects on our healthcare accessibility, our educational attainment, and so on. So we will try to provide a fuller picture on what we are and where we are headed. And perhaps the biggest value add, if I may add, and I mentioned this during the press conference, is not just the publication of these data sets, which is important for people to know what is the common framework or the common playbook that we are leading from. So if you go to the website, you will see under each data dashboard, there is a section that says, why does this matter? So we want to show you where we are getting the data from. We are fully disclosing the source of the data. We are showing you what the data means to you and why should we care about life expectancy? Why should we care about life expectancy? There is a moral reason to care about life expectancy, particularly the disparities in our life expectancy across our different neighborhoods. But there is also an economic reason. And in addition to a moral reason, there is an economic reason to care about it because by improving life expectancy will add economic value to the city. It will make our businesses thrive more. It will add more jobs. It will keep our younger people in the community. So there is a lot of economic benefit. And as an economist, I said that's my bias is to kind of gravitate towards the economic question. Well, what's the economic proposition over here? And so that's kind of reflected in the way that the website will produce the data and showcase the data.
If you're just joining us, we are talking to Dr. Parvez Ahmed about the city's new State of JAX initiative. You can join the conversation. You can give us a call on air at 904-549-2937. You can email comments or questions to firstcoastconnect@wjct.org, or you can reach out on Facebook, Instagram, or X at FCC On Air. I want to get into some of the data a little deeper because you, in your presentation Tuesday, you talked, at length about things like the disparities when it comes to life expectancy. And as you said, even before you knew on a granular level that there were disparities, it was something that created sort of an audible gasp when you would talk about it because it is a dramatic difference. I want you to tell us a little bit about the two districts that you compared in terms of life expectancy, the two neighborhoods, I think, and kind of how you were able to find that um, just getting more and more dramatic the closer you got to the ground.
Yeah, so life expectancy in Jacksonville overall is about 76 years. So when we compare Jacksonville overall to our peer cities that we included in this list, we are, I think, 10th or 11th in the list of 14 cities. We are 2.5 years below the national and state average. So that's one level, meta level of concern that you can see in the life expectancy data. But then when you begin to take a more granular look at the data, between two city council districts, we compared District 10 with District 3. The life expectancy difference is about 10 years. 70 is the life expectancy, median life expectancy in District 10. It's about 80 in District 3.
And I just want to stop you because if people are watching our live stream, we do have a map of the council districts up on our screen. And just to describe it, I mean, Council District 10 is Northwest Jacksonville, in an urban district, and Council District 3 is southeast. It is towards the beaches, and not as urban of a district.
Right. So then we compared, so when we said, okay, now we have that picture, let's take a level because there are several zip codes that are part of a city council district, so we can take a little bit more granular approach. So we compared zip code 32209 to zip code 32224. And we see the disparity there is about 12 years.
So it grows.
It grows from average of 32209 is 69, zip code 32224 is 81. So
instead
years.
of just being 10 years difference, now it's 12 years.
Difference. Then we said, well, let's take it a level down and look at neighborhoods. So we compared two neighborhoods. One neighborhood is called College Garden. It is just south of UF Health, west of Springfield, to another neighborhood in South Mandarin. The disparity there is 25 years. 25 years. Among the highest disparity in between two neighborhoods nationwide. So this is, and I mentioned this during the press conference, data like this is not about woe be us. This is not about look how bad we are. This is more about this is the reality of our neighborhoods. This is the reality of our people. What can we do better?
You also compared those statistics on life expectancy to what if College Garden and Mandarin represented a country, a nation?
Yes. So I said, if College Garden was a country of its own, it would be ranked 150th in the world. And if South Mandarin was a country of its own, its life expectancy would rank number 1 in the world. So within one city, Mayor talks about this, Harry Shorstein talked about this years ago, that we are a tale of two cities. So it is a motivation to do better. As I ended my presentation, I used the quote from Maya Angelou that when we know better, we should do better. This initiative, State of Jax, is about knowing better. This is about for all of us, because look at some of this data is accessible to a lot of people who are in influential positions. Businesses know about this data. When a business tries to move into a city, they research the city at a much granular level than most ordinary citizens in the city would know about it. So it is not about like we are publishing bad data and it will prevent somebody from coming in. No, anybody who wants to come in there knowing this data. And I just want to leave you with one story. Dr. Limaim talked about his experience when he was in Tampa. When he was in Tampa about 8 or 9 years ago, the city of Tampa was trying to recruit Amazon to come into their city, to open one of their headquarters in the city. So they invited Amazon, the city leaders, they got together, they made a presentation like normally our Jack's Chamber or anybody else would do a presentation when they're trying to recruit a business to come over here. And the people in Amazon, they listened to the presentation. Then after the city finished their presentation, Amazon representatives went ahead, got up and they said, let me tell you exactly what your city actually looks like. And they started to show some of the granular data about the city, and it surprised city leaders to know that data. Not surprisingly, Amazon did not come into Tampa, and that sparked a conversation in Tampa that led to the creation of this data dashboard in Tampa called State of the Region, which then inspires us. We are 7 years behind them, but better late than never.
So this data is aggregated from a number of data sets, including census data, CDC data, EPA data, data from the Housing and Urban Development. One of the metrics that you have, in addition to life expectancy, that I found incredibly revealing and I think is worth discussing a little bit is one that I'd never even heard of before in terms of a measurement of public health or health outcomes, and that is the number of children per pediatrician in a certain area. Can you talk a little bit about, first of all, what that is an indicator, what it signifies, and also what the data show?
So I mentioned this during my press conference also, that among all the data points that I looked at, that's the data point that surprised me the most. In Jacksonville, as the data point shows, we have one pediatrician on average covering about 712 kids, which ranks us much poorer than all of the 13 other cities that we looked at.
We're at the bottom of
We are
that
at the
list.
bottom of the list. Comparatively to Orlando, it is about 130 kids per pediatrician.
Instead of over 700.
It's over 700. So initially when I looked at the data, I said, well, that's a concern. But then what caused additional concern is when I segmented the data by city council district. The disparity between two city council districts, one district was about 9,000 kids per pediatrician. In another city council district, it was about 125 or 130 kids. So there's a huge disparity within the city. And the question becomes, why should we care about data points like that? Access to pediatrician, access to a primary care physician, not only is a moral cause, we should do it because it's the right thing to do for everybody to have access to resources that provide them healthy lifestyles. But there is an economic argument to it also. As an economist, again, that's my bias to look into that and say, well, what's the economic proposition of adding more pediatricians or adding more primary care doctors to our city? And there are millions of dollars in benefit because access to primary care physician means you will get to a doctor quicker, you will get diagnosed quicker, you will not end up in an emergency room, you will not have missed schools or missed work days. So that all have a cascading impact on it. And there are ways in which economists can tease out what the economic value proposition is. In the rough calculation that I did, it turned out to be adding one pediatrician would add about $6 million in value to our city.
Just a single pediatrician?
Just a single pediatrician.
It's extraordinary. And we should say the districts that you were looking at there, where Council District 5, which is, again, kind of east of the river and on the south side of the city, that there was about 124 kids for every pediatrician, and Council District 12, which is on the west side, more than 9,000 kids for every pediatrician. So what happens to those kids, practically speaking? I mean, I think it's fair to say there's not probably a pediatrician who's actually seeing 9,000 kids in a year. So what's happening to those kids?
It's just inaccessibility. And some of it is geography. Some of our districts on the west side are geographically large. So you can see there will be a little bit fewer, the disbursement will be a little bit more dramatic there. But some of it is not just explained by geography. It doesn't mean that a kid who is on one side of town where there is fewer pediatrician will not ever get access to a doctor. They can always drive further. They can find. It just adds cost burden to the families. It adds burden to the kid who has to, with their parent, drive longer distance to get or wait longer to see a pediatrician. I was telling this story the other day that I was meeting with a council member, and he had a intern with him at that meeting who lived in one of those areas of town where there are fewer pediatricians. As I was going through the presentation, and this is the high school kid about to go and get into college, he was quiet throughout the presentation, but when I came to that pediatrician data, he immediately stopped me and he said, I can relate to that data point. And I said, how so? He said, when my mom needs to make an appointment for me, it takes about 3 months to get an appointment. So you can see that these data points are not just data. There is a human aspect to it. Even like the life expectancy data that I talked about, I said a 9-year difference between one area of town and another area of town, or a 25-year difference between one area of town and another area of town. Don't view that as a number. Think about it as the difference between somebody being able to see their daughter walk down the aisle, or their grandchild graduate from college or graduate from high school. That's the difference that we are talking about. There's a human level cost to not being able to improve some of these numbers.
Sure. And I mean, that number translates to, about an average of 62 in some of these less advantaged neighborhoods versus 87 people who are living, as you say, another generation longer, essentially.
Yeah, one of my colleagues was actually born in that area that I talked about, College Garden. When I showed him the data, he said, since the median life expectancy in that area is 62 years, he said, by that number, I should be dead by now. And that kind of hits you. That this is not just, sometimes we look at numbers and we can get lost in the statistics and the data, but we should always front and center the human face behind the numbers.
Well, I think that, out of all of those data points, as you said, the number of pediatricians, that is one that really seems to put kind of some heart into the data. It is not just a number. It is children that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
We've got a call from Curtis on the north side. Good morning, Curtis. Go ahead.
Good morning, Ann. Good morning, Dr. Perez. I love it when you're on the show, Dr. Perez. You make things so simple and so able for anyone can understand it.
Thank you.
The average individual does not realize how important data is. And I say data, real data, true data. It's so important.
Thank you so
much, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Curtis. Appreciate the call. As we said, your background is in business, and so you have crunched the numbers on a number of these data points. You talked about, adding a single pediatrician could actually generate $6 million, kind of add that to the local economy. But you did the same thing for things like household rent burden and college graduates, which is another area that we are sort of behind the curve on in terms of not just the number of kids or adults who get a bachelor's degree, but those who go on to do advanced degrees.
Yeah, so there's some good news in the education front. We do very well not only with our high school graduation rates, but also the number of residents in our city that have at least a high school degree. Almost 90% of our residents have at least a high school degree. And we do well with that number. Where we are challenged is what happens after. So when we look at the number of residents with a bachelor's degree, it's about 1 in 3. When we look at the number of residents with a graduate or a professional degree, it's about 1 in 10. And in both metrics, we are more towards the bottom of the list. And that has a cost to it. So there are several ways to look at it. One way is to say that why are we where we are? In part because maybe we are not graduating enough bachelor's or master's degree within our city. It ties in with the mayor and the city council's support for not only bringing UF to town, but also the financial support that they provide to UNF or to JU is to create more graduate, professional, and bachelor's degree production out of those institutions. But it also raises a question about what happens to those kids after they graduate. Are we retaining them in Jacksonville? Because we can produce a lot more graduates by providing higher financial support to our institutions of higher learning. But the question then has to get into what are we doing to keep those graduates in our city? And the reason we look into that data is adding we know this. Somebody with a bachelor's degree earns about $24,000 more on average than somebody with a high school degree. Somebody with a graduate or a professional degree earns about $40,000 to $50,000 more on average than somebody with a high school degree. So that additional income leads to additional spending power. They have more discretionary spending, so they will go to restaurants and frequent local businesses, buy higher valued homes. So that has a cascading and a ripple effect through the entire economy to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. And we see this, cities that have higher proportion of college graduates and graduate degree, they are better positioned to attract the industries of the future.
I know that in our next segment, we're going to be talking about, the immigration law impact on education, and that definitely is a financial consideration that this entire state is grappling with. But in terms of cost, I mean, people will wonder, what does it cost to put this together, this program, this portal? What is the cost to taxpayers? And then, who's going to be watching this? Because it's not just a matter of aggregating the data, but keeping an eye on it, tracking it, answering questions, because there's a button you can click on to find out more on the site. Who's going to be kind of maintaining and overseeing this site?
Right now, it's me.
Okay.
Hopefully, we'll have more support. We have a student intern from UNF that is, in addition, supporting this. Our data advisory team, which is a bunch of, very committed and dedicated volunteers, they are chipping in where they can. So we are putting this together through a creative public-private partnership. Some of it is city resources, my time, my effort into this, also relying on a lot of volunteer hours to help guide this conversation. So go to the website, go under Meet the Coalition, meet the people that are behind this initiative, and when you see them at events or anywhere else, do thank them for providing the time for this. In terms of cost, the direct cost is actually very modest. We have asked, the mayor has asked through this city council, this budget, about $237,000 in support. $200,000 goes towards the data vendor that provides us with the source data. It's called My Sidewalk. That's the data vendor, which is a nationally recognized data source that is used by hundreds and thousands of municipalities around the country and businesses. And the other amount is to create the website and support the website. So it's a very modest outlay. When you think about it in terms of what this data can provide, this is not just about providing the data on the website. It is also providing data on demand. If city council, and I presented this to city council members, if they're working on something and they feel that some data can support the initiatives that they're looking at, all they need to do is send a request to me, and I'll look it up and tell them what is possible and what is not possible. But in addition to that, the city spends quite a bit through our initiatives at KHA, through our public service grants,
Kids Hope Alliance,
the Kids Hope Alliance, public service grants, cultural council, the CBA, the community benefit agreement will kick in a few few short weeks. So all of that requires data support. We would be better off knowing what the baseline data is so that we can track going forward. One of the questions I posed very early on to the mayor, I said, the mayor, you see where we spend the money. Do we know what impact are we making where we are spending the money? If we have a baseline, then over time we can track, and then we can adjust where we are making improvements, we increase our spending. Where we are not making enough improvements, we maybe change strategy.
Well, it is a great site to visit and explore for everybody, ordinary folks and people in business. It's thestateofjax.org.
Just stateofjax.org.
Stateofjax.org. Dr. Parvez Ahmed, thanks for coming on today and explaining it to us.
Thanks a lot, Anne. I appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.